Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Wait, I Know You video podcast, the podcast about things you might know, created by people you might not. Today, I'm talking to Craig Billmeier, the lead singer of the band Love Songs. I've known Craig for many years and from the San Francisco Bay Area punk rock scene, and he's easily one of the most animated live performers that I've ever witnessed. When I had heard that he had entered an air guitar championship as a performer, Hot Lixx Hulahan, I wasn't surprised in the least, knowing how wild he is on stage. And speaking of love songs, Craig is currently doing a Love Song of the Month column on thebadcopy.com. A link to it will be in the description of the video, as well as links to love songs and all the other awesome things he's done. If you enjoy this video, please tap the like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Had to fuck that part up. And with that, let's talk to Craig, aka Craigums, aka Hot Lixx Hulahan. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Wait, I Know You podcast, Season 1, Episode 1. My name is Nick Rounds, and I will be your host. My next guest is a two-time USA air guitar champion and is a 2008 World air guitar champion. He's been part of the legendary punk rock bands All You Can Eat, Your Mother, and the Love Songs, and though he's had insane travels and adventure, drank liquid danger straight from life's chalice, he's now a boring corporate shill, married with children. Craig Billmeier, welcome to Wait, I Know You. How are you today?
I am well. It is very early in the morning, and
well, they don't know that.
I want to preface that. Also, wasn't expecting video, so that's apologies to anybody noticing.
It's okay.
Also, I decided to wear glasses for some reason, which probably only makes my eyes like 3 times puffier.
No, it's okay. I mean, we all have faces in radio right now anyway, so it's all good.
I would like to point out though that I am wearing shoes and you're not.
Hey, don't foot shame me. You should be thanking me that I put my feet in the internet for you. And already it's off to a weird start. Anyway.
Right. If we go up from here, I'm going to be disappointed.
I have to just go lower. So Craig, my podcast is called Wait, I Know You, and it's about people that have done amazing things and they might necessarily know the person. You have achieved a couple amazing different things in your life. And I think the most amazing one is the fact that you're a world air guitar champion. But I want to kind of talk to what led up to that and talk about your punk rock roots. So can you talk about your early days in the punk rock scene and what turned you into a musician?
Well, apologies to anyone else who is a real musician for nudging into your space. Classic 80s story, latchkey kid, punk rock spoke to angry white boy kind of thing. I also was a huge, music was big in my house. My dad was not afraid to buy me heavy metal records and stuff, so it wasn't a big leap to get the Clash or Suicidal Tendencies in the early mid 80s. And so also it was very visually alluring. All of the things that can tap into a young boy's psyche was there as far as going down the fast aggressive music route. But I was also an avid Weird Al fan, and so the more colorful the music, the better. And there was also that spazzy energy about it there. So when I was in high school, seems a normal time, started playing with my friends, started getting instruments, and we started figuring out who could play what. The answer was none of us could play anything, but that didn't stop us. And I actually have a picture. I'm gonna grab it real quick because this is definitely worth sharing for anyone watching. 1 second.
Okay.
It was on my wall. It's such a treasured picture of mine. But in this picture, this is my first live concert I ever played, which I really believe set the tone for every other concert I ever played. But so I'm going to frame it there. So if you look at this picture, here, let me give you a little backstory. One day, my friend Brian says, "Hey, my band's playing on the quad at lunch. You want to play guitar?" It's like, yeah, totally. That sounds awesome. That was the top of the mountain was playing on the quad at lunch in front of your peers, who you really probably had no chance of ever impressing in the first place. But then
they already hate you.
I was a smart ass little kid, so I had friends and enemies, but whatever. Wait, that is not what this is about. So my friend Brian calls me, asks me to play guitar. Calls my friend Paul. Hey, Paul, my band's playing on the quad. Do you want to play bass? Oh, sure. And he calls the other guy. Hey, my band's playing on the quad. Do you want to play drums? And so he cobbles this band together, all under the guise of it actually being an already existing band. And that's the last I hear of it. 2 months go by, and I get a phone call at like 7 o'clock at night on a school night. And I'm only 14, 15 at the time. And he says, hey, we're playing on the quad tomorrow. We got to write some songs. So I was like, all right, trial by fire. So my friend Paul, the guy who was inscripted to play bass, his mom owned a music store. So we went to that music store because they had instruments there. And we wrote, quote unquote, 45 minutes of music for a 35-minute lunch period. And we got to school. We set up and we played that 45 minutes of music in under 20 minutes. Totally fueled by like fear and excitement and sheer volume of 10-watt amplifiers. And so this picture so after 20 minutes, we're strapped and everyone's watching us, this train wreck, and we have to now play for 15 more minutes. So our friend Chris is out there and he knows the song. So he kind of tells us how this song goes, and we decide, okay, we're going to play along. And this is us playing that song. So keep in mind, this is in front of, when you're in high school, kind of your only world is the people in your high school. So like, this is me in front of all the people who I think matter in the world. Now, the guy over here with the white shorts, that's also a bad indicator. He's the one who knows this song. And if you look, he is playing an A chord. And then if you look to his left, you'll see that's me, and I'm looking over his shoulder, but I'm playing a G chord. And then if you look across to the guy in the red shirt playing guitar, he's got a confused look on his face because he's playing an F chord. And then the guy in the middle of us who's playing the bass is looking at him, also very confused, playing an F sharp. So that's 4 almost consecutive notes that don't go together in any world.
But you sounded great.
Like that was how it started, and that's how it's still going.
And thus punk rock was born.
Yes. So anyway, so that that started things, and you realize, boy, you can do this regardless of any skills.
Of musical talent. Yeah.
But at the time, this is like this is 88, I think, or so. And so like Gilman was just getting started, and that was like a very accessible venue where bands also who weren't quote unquote good could play. And so we ended up going there every weekend, and also the Bay Area was just exploding at that time, just music in general. And so we were just seeing music all the time. And I remember telling my dad at one point in high school, he said, "You're going to another concert tonight?" I was like, "Well, that's what I want to do." And it was a kind of a revelation. Like, all I want to do is go to concerts. That's all. I just want to see bands play. And I remember I go to Gilman, and the first band would play at like 8 o'clock, but they wouldn't open doors until 8 o'clock. So if the first band there would literally be no audience there for them because they would be filtering. Like, I don't know why they did, and it drove me crazy because I couldn't stand to miss a single song of a single band. And so I always tried hard not to. And that played out quite funnily one time because I went to go to Gilman, and I was like, I am not going to miss the first song of the first band. I'm going to get there early and try and like come in the side door or something, whatever. So I get there, and I'm like pretty early, and the band's already playing, and I'm like, oh God, I can't believe how did I miss it? And so after each song, I'm like clapping and excited, but there's only like 6 other people there, and nobody's clapping at all. And I'm like, that's kind of a dick move. And so I start clapping extra loud. And then after each song, eventually I'm like, yeah, woo, you're great. Anyway, what I didn't realize is I had gotten there so early that it was a band who was recording their demo there.
Oh, shit.
And so I'm just yelling over the whole demo. Yeah, you're great.
Thinking you're doing them a favor.
So anyway, clearly I was just
suddenly you're going to be on the record like Eddie Van Halen backing into the back of 5150 as David Lee Roth is recording vocals, and you hear the Lamborghini revving up.
Mm-hmm.
Panama.
That is a perfect equivalency of what I was doing.
You were the Lamborghini.
Very accurate. So I was very clearly like super into just doing that. And so when finally got enough songs together of my first band.
Can you give the audience the elevator pitch on what Gilman is for those of them that don't live on the West Coast?
Gilman Street is a venue. It's a kind of a clubhouse, like a community art space that was set up by a bunch of punk rockers back in the kind of, I don't know, 86 and end of 86. And they it was basically anybody could play there if like your as long as you weren't like a skinhead band or anything. But they would put on plays from time to time, and it was a community space. And so, but eventually it became like known as like a punk rock mecca on the West Coast. And so
like bands, the West Coast CBGBs.
Yeah, it's exactly what it was. But it was like a romper room version of that, which in the most endearing way. But that's how it's often was referred to back then. And so so that was it was just a venue that was like anyone could play, but when you haven't played there, it seems like once you do play there that you just achieved absolute greatness. So we got to play there way back when in high school or something, and then we just kind of like tried to be part of that community. We would go to concerts every night and started making friends with all the bands, and then we started playing with all these bands that we loved. And I remember we'd play shows with two of our favorite bands were Schlong and Anal Mucus, which I realized how like family inappropriate just the band name alone already is. But we were called Your Mother, so I think we fit right in there. And then we just kind of started getting more and more ambitious. It's one of those things when that's all you want to do, you invariably start doing more and more of that thing, which leads to more and more exploring that stuff, which sometimes means playing a show that's 100 miles away from home. And sometimes it means sleeping on people's floors and couches. And eventually that's all it means. It's like traveling and touring and sleeping on floors and, making friends across the world and finding bands that you like. And that just becomes your entire world. And that's basically what happened. That was kind of the quick route to get to there.
So how long did what was the timeline for Your Mother and all the other punk rock bands that you're involved with?
So I think Your Mother probably played our first show, recorded our first demo 1990, put a date, and then that lasted to 2000. But then along the way, somebody had told me about this band in the early 90s. I'm going to say like 91-ish. And they said, there's this band called All You Can Eat. You totally should be friends with them. This is like right up your alley. And so I wrote them a letter and never heard back. And the letter was like, hey, I'm told my friend says we'd be friends. And and they never wrote back. But then in 1993, so a couple of years later, my friends going to see a show. And it's Jawbreaker and Rancid, Monsula, and All You Can Eat. And I was like, oh, All You Can Eat. That's that band that I was that someone told me I'd really like. Let's go to the show. So needless to say, this is before any of those bands ascended, but they were still pretty popular. So that show was totally packed, shoulder to shoulder. And while this band All You Can Eat was playing, I was indeed like just riveted by them. They were just they encapsulated so much of what I loved about live music. They were just constantly jumping around and making jokes and just having a really good time and like creating like a really fun, energetic atmosphere. And which kind of plays more towards the Weird Al. It's like the perfect marriage, of like Weird Al and fast aggressive music. And but then nobody, I'm looking around, and aside from the like few people that I came with, nobody cares. And I was totally befuddled. I was like, why are you not realizing that this is the greatest thing you'll ever see? And whatever. So anyway, mid set, the singer raises his hand. He's like, so this is our bass player's last show, and we're accepting resumes to fill his position, kind of making a joke because nobody gives a shit that's watching them. But we're kind of sort of towards the back because again, it's like super packed. And
that's the butts, as they say.
There, yes, indeed. I feel I need to write that down. But I raised my hand in the back, like, hey, me. And so it's, oh, okay. So, kind of made note. Anyway, after the show, he comes over and comes to talk to my friend who brought me to the show. And then he looks at me and he's like, oh, so, do you want to play bass? You're interested in playing bass? And I was like, yeah. I did not own a bass. I did not know how to play bass. I could kind of play guitar. So I thought maybe I could fudge it, but they don't know any of that. So sure, whatever. And so he's like, all right, well, here's all of our records and learn as much as you can. And he's like, oh, yeah, cool. My name's Craig. He's like, oh, Craig, didn't you write me a letter a couple of years ago? And like totally remembered. and I learned that was Devin. And I learned that was like how Devin kind of worked. Like he remembers everything, but isn't always the timeliest about that kind of stuff. So anyway, I go home, I put on the records, I borrow my friend's little brother's bass, and I learn a little bit of every song on all the records. And I go to this audition, which is in San Francisco at the Holy Cow. If you remember, that is that dance club. The practice space is right above it.
Yep.
And it, like total like classic practice space. It's kind of dingy, smells bad. It feels very dangerous at all times. And there's always somebody sleeping in your practice space for some reason. And I show up to my audition time. And there's somebody already in the room auditioning, and I'm outside. And I was like, oh, I guess it didn't occur to me that there would be like a line of people auditioning for this band. And I listened, and this dude is just nailing it, like way far beyond what I could ever accomplish at that time. And I was thinking, well, that was kind of a whoops. A lot happened. But I wait my turn. I go inside and I meet everybody. And I had brought cookies that my mom had made. And I was like, hey guys, I brought cookies. And again, I'm really young. But like, okay, come on in. And it doesn't occur to me that this is an audition where I'm auditioning to play the notes that the song requires. To me, it's like I'm auditioning to be in a band, and I saw this band and they were super fun. So I'm going to play this like a show. So I'm like jumping off the amp, spinning around, head banging, and like, windmilling and like just going nuts as I felt I was warranted. And it didn't occur to me until like later when they mentioned, like that was not how auditions usually go, that I realized, or that I had done the right thing, essentially. So I think between the cookies and just like being more performative, they like stepped outside for like a minute and then came back in like, you want to be the bass player? And I was like, hey, isn't this how Jason Newsted joined Metallica? And
I wonder what kind of cookies he made for Lars. It must have been that oatmeal raisin.
I don't know, some sort of Dutch or Danish. He brought him Danishes. So yeah,
just
so then
sewing supplies. How dare you?
But that was, so I joined All You Can Eat at that moment, and 2 weeks went by and we played our first. So we practiced a couple times, and I'm still. It was my freshman year of college, so like it was the end of the school year, and we practiced for 2 weeks. Played a show at the Neurosis Warehouse, and then in the next week, school ends, and we went on what was my first real tour. It was a U.S. tour, like 5 weeks, and then I came back from that tour like, well, this is it. This is what I'm going to do.
That's amazing. Another thing to note about Gilman specifically, if you're not familiar with it, is like all the Bay Area bands, famous Bay Area bands that came out of Gilman specifically. Rancid, Green Day. I mean, you mentioned Neurosis.
Jawbreaker.
Yeah. Like it was a wild time in the Bay Area for punk rock and just independent bands in general coming out of that. And the fact that you're mixed into that is just, how does that feel all these years later of like your childhood being involved with all that energy of that scene?
I think it's exciting to know. Well, first off, it's really dangerous to look and say like, oh, that was somebody's glory days. Like everybody's always pining to create something that they saw that already happened. And rarely do you recognize that you're in the middle of a new version of that for your community. But at the time, I know that we felt, especially when you start traveling and you realize that like somebody in like upstate Connecticut is not living the same experience that you're getting to experience, and they're not seeing this like explosion of like creative, exciting art going on. And so I started to recognize that like this is like a golden time, and it felt good participating in it and not just spectating it. and just getting to like know and meet other people who had that same, like, I don't know, I wouldn't say vision. There was no vision. It was just like ambition, like blind ambition. You just kind of want to do things and be creative and doing stuff and being active. And so yeah, I recognized at the time, but we were kind of doing our own thing. I wouldn't say that we were part of that Green Day, Rancid, Jawbreaker explosion. I think that those just kind of like helped things, helped lay not lay a ground, help the foundation be stronger. So like, you know, they could play shows where the venues made, like Gilman could make money to like stay open another month. And so it wasn't necessarily that we were part of that scene. I think I would just be, you know, it was good. It was helpful that they were part of the scene as well. And that helped us. Like, I mean, to this day, Green Day is still like funneling money into like Gilman and the Bay Area scene and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, those are important things, but I feel very lucky that I found something that feels like it was one of those historical cultural touch points. So yeah, that's exciting.
And then after your mother and All You Can Eat, eventually you made it to the band Love Songs.
I did. Well, in the middle there was some hardcore bands.
Oh,
and
awesome.
That was so when towards it, like All You Can Eat kind of like, you know, we went our separate, we still get together, and I'm still on a text thread with them like at this moment. But we just don't always play. We're just like a group of friends. And but we didn't play so much, but Devin and I still wanted, like, so one of the key components of All You Can Eat was that we toured to anywhere that we could, anywhere that would allow us. And that's not just like Sioux Falls, South Dakota, but it's also like other countries. And the more kind of ridiculous and unorthodox, the better. So that was what we ended up really spending our time doing, was like any pen pal from any place in the world, we would try and like track that down and then set up a tour to go there. And so that brought us to like, I don't know, 4 continents, I guess, at that time. And so that was like that was the thing we did. So I spent like my like music writing kind of focus was on bands like Your Mother, where I could just sit and write riffs, whereas like All You Can Eat like really scratched that itch to be adventurous and to like get out in the world and see things. And so when All You Can Eat kind of stopped, we just stopped playing. Devin and I wanted to kind of keep going, and so we had this band called What Happens Next, and that was like one of the tenets of that band was about the international hardcore scene, and like realizing that this is an international thing. It's not just like US hardcore. It was like
that's New York.
We want to go and we want to find all the other like-minded people in the world and bring us together and enjoy our community. And yeah, and so What Happens Next played for quite a few years, and we did that same sort of thing and kept that travel touring international mantra going. And then when we stopped doing that, we then started another band called Conquest for Death, which took it even farther, and we got to like even made it finally into Africa, which is kind of one of our last places that we had a hard time getting into, and or kind of making it happen. And so that I feel like that was more of my time was spent doing things like that, traveling and getting out there and just being part of a larger world, which is almost separate from like the Your Mother Love Songs thing, which I think was the more like creative, express yourself sort of thing.
Right.
And so all of them always happened in tandem, and oftentimes it was all very incestuous. Like I was my own throughput, but then like, some guys would play in this band, but then also cross the line and play in my sissy rock band as opposed to my aggressive hardcore band. Like I love to just keep everybody in the mix all the time and just kind of like, that was the whole thing. It's like a community. So let's all do stuff that feels inspiring and we feel inspired by.
You're all friends collaborating. Yeah, it's important to note too that like the insane amount of travels you've had and how many different countries and continents you've been to, including Antarctica, which not many people can say. In fact, you wrote a book about that.
I did. Funny you should mention that.
Do you want to talk to me about some of your crazy travels and how the Antarctica trip came about?
Antarctica came about because I had at that point I had made it to 6 of the continents, and at that point I think I was feeling brash and like, well, you got to check off number 7. So, and that was back pre-internet. So I had a travel agent that booked a lot of our travel. And so I always kind of like on the side be like, hey, if you find any passages to Antarctica for cheap, let me know. And we kind of joke around about that. And then one day he's like, hey, I found you a ticket on a Russian icebreaker to Antarctica if you want to do it. I was like, yes, sign me up. And so I did it. And which happened the weekend after your mother stopped playing, since we're combining the timelines. And yeah, so I just went and did that. And it was, I mean, it might sound a little more haphazard or uncomfortable than it really was. But yeah, I rode in a Russian icebreaker that was later most notorious for becoming a cannibal rat infested ghost ship that floated around the world for years unmanned.
What?
Yeah, if you just Google cannibal rat infested ghost ship, the Loyola Orlova will show up, and that was the ship that I took to Antarctica. Sorry, it's still early.
So you're telling me this thing was just out there floating this entire time, and then like all this crazy stuff happened after that?
No, all this crazy stuff happened before that.
Yeah.
So I think it was moored in England or
you cut out for half a second. Let's wait until you come back.
Am I here? Am I here?
You're back now.
Okay. The ship was moored in England or somewhere, and it somehow broke free and just started floating around the world's oceans. And
wow.
I don't know how. I think it was going to be salvaged or scrapped, and so I think somehow somebody had gotten it, found it or whatever, and then brought it back before and realized like, oh my God, this is scary. It's cannibal rats took over this whole ship. But then it got lost again. And I think they could sort of beacon it around the world or something. But eventually I think it just got lost at sea. There's lots of theories out there about what happened to it. But yeah, that's a pretty interesting footnote, I thought.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then so after post Your Mother, post All You Can Eat, post Conquest for Death, and all your other hardcore bands, eventually you make the Love Songs, which is where I know you from, because I used to work with your guitarist Jackson at Borders,
and my roommate.
And your roommate. Oh, I forgot about that. That.
Todd was your boss, if I recall.
Yeah.
So we were destined to meet.
Can you talk to me about how Love Songs was formed and and is it true that your first performance was in an empty barn in Gilroy with the full lineup?
Oh, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
I mean, the common through line here is that you're committing to a performance regardless of who's watching.
I appreciate you recognizing that, because without realizing it, that is 100% true. Somewhere on a train in Germany, Bradley, the drummer for Your Mother, and I were talking about just playing music, and he said, if we do another band, we should just call it Love Songs, and then put people, because we also, so Your Mother played a lot of like, it was kind of Descendants-y in that it was had a lot of relationship chatter in it, which was, and we're playing with bands who are just singing about like hardcore politics and not hardcore politics, but like hardcore talking about politics. And then we're in there talking about like farts and girlfriends and stuff. And so
not necessarily mutually exclusive.
No, not at all. When in a perfect world they go together, but they we thought that we should just like go right into it and be like, hey, these are love songs, deal with it. And we just thought that was kind of funny and like even more aggressive, because like you're going into the belly of the beast and doing the like opposite, which is, I mean, it's a kind of a pretty punk rock thing to do. And so we thought like, and let's just call it Love Songs. Like, what? Nobody can be upset if like, well, dude, we told you we're love songs. So what did you expect? And anyway, a few years later, Brad, when I went to Antarctica at like the same day, Brad moved to Los Angeles, and we kind of were living different lives. And then he decided to move back to the Bay Area. And when he moved back, he's like, hey, what do you want to do, that Love Songs project, which I had done as Your Mother was sort of fading out. I got my first 4-track, And actually, it wasn't my first 4-track. That's not true at all. I don't know why I said that, but I got a 4-track and started recording demos because it was my first time really like hunkering down and like learning multi-track and bouncing stuff, and basically created my own band because I was tired of being in a band with people who wouldn't show up, or like our bass player Alan, if per chance you're listening, I remember I had to track his parents down to get money for airline tickets for a tour, and I was like, I don't want to be doing this. This is irritating. And so I just started trying to like try and play all the instruments myself and record it at the same time, so not having to rely on anybody was essentially what it was. So I had done that, but I did have Brad help me on a couple songs because he's a gazillion times better drummer than I am or will ever be. And nice cat, I see you. Meow.
Yeah, he's currently headbutting the microphone, and if you hear purring, it's Crow deciding he wants to be filmed right now.
Okay, it's definitely not my stomach. And so he played on a couple of songs. So then I made a demo, and I made that demo. I called it the Love Songs. I called it actually just Love Songs. And I gave that demo out at the last Your Mother show because I thought I might not see a lot of these people again. Like, this was a community that we built for 10 years. And this may be like the common thread that binds us. And if I don't have this, here's like a little business card, like, hey, good to see you. I hope to be in touch here, whatever. And so anyway, fast forward like a year and a half, and Brad moves back to the Bay Area, and he's like, hey, want to make that a band? Remember that guy, Seth, who used to always come to the Your Mother shows? He was like this really young kid that was always up front and just like right up in the melee. And I was like, yeah, I remember Seth. He's like, well, he can play bass. And I said, well, okay, if you guys kind of want to figure it out. So we got together and we learned those songs that were on the demo, a few of those songs. And we played a show at Mission Records, the old Mission Records. No, it was it though? No, it was the new Mission Records, And it was kind of fun. And we played it with like other thrashcore bands, and it was definitely, we were out of our element, but we're called Love Songs, so nobody can complain because we were, truth and advertising right up front. But we realized right away, like, I wrote, because I sat down and had all like the unlimited, well, it wasn't unlimited, but I had like time to just sit and add guitar tracks and make things more complicated. Playing as a 3-piece didn't work. It didn't cut it. So somebody being Seth, suggested, hey, I've got this friend who plays guitar. Maybe he could do it. And that was Jackson. And so we went over to Jackson's apartment, and he played like this. I think it was like a generic hollow body or something. It sounded really terrible. I don't think he had an amp or anything. Somehow, as a testimony to Jack's charisma, I was still like, okay, this guy seems fun enough. He also had no fashion sense back then, which is interesting to note because he's such a fashion icon now. But he was
it like a Canadian tuxedo situation, or like what?
It was a thrift store. It was like just shoes that did not fit his feet, pants that had like no cut, which wouldn't bother me, but like when I think of Jackson now versus then, it's such a like stark contrast. But he was fun to hang around with, and he could play the stuff. He's a talented guitar, but he's very like Jonathan Richman chord oriented, and like he definitely leaned into those things. And like pretty quickly, I could see that he was like he had a lot of creativity in him, and he was fun to be around, and he filled out those missing parts. So our first show was in Gilroy at a barn, but it was like a big barn, like a very large, probably a 800 capacity barn. And there was literally not one single paying person at that show. But it's like we sounded like a band, like things were fleshed out, and it was like I could definitely feel like, okay, this is worth putting time into and continuing. And so very quickly though, we kind of gelled. Jack got a better guitar, we had better amps, like things started sounding like a band. We practiced all the time, and then that became like kind of my main source of expression, for lack of a better term. And that was 20 years ago. Maybe 19, wild. But 20 years ago.
Yeah. I feel old from you saying that. For context, so I do photography, and thanks to you, actually, I got my break into just photographing bands and models, but also bands, mainly because of you guys. And I don't think there's any better band to have started filming or, you know, taking photos of, because it didn't matter like when I took the photo. I would just always get like an amazing picture out of every single time I hit the shutter button. You
Interesting.
guys are like one of the most amazing bands to photograph.
Wow, that's a high compliment. Thank you.
Well, I'm not here to compliment you. I'm actually here to make fun of you, but no, I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's yeah, bring it on. That's my comfort zone.
So I know and love the Love Songs. And I love all the songs that Love Songs has made. I think two of the ones I actually want to talk about. I actually want to talk about two different Love Songs specifically.
Interesting. Okay.
I want to talk about Love Songs Loves Us Some Reno, and I want to talk about Thrillhouse. So,
all right.
Can you talk to me about Love Song's experience with Reno and why you love Reno so much? And then also, what is Thrillhouse? And tell the people what every iteration of Thrillhouse is.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Two subjects close to my heart. So yeah, a couple times we veered out of the relationship-oriented love song paradigm. We wrote a song about Reno. I don't know. I don't even remember how it happened. I think What Happens Next had played in Reno, and I made some friends when that time, because like Reno's always been one of those places that's just outside of the Bay Area. It's like 4 hours outside of the Bay Area. So it's culturally close enough that like there's a lot of like there is some back and forth, but it's far enough away that they have to have their own functioning scene there, which then like fosters its own unique kind of characteristics. So in the early 90s, we'd befriended Sticker Guy. Your mother had befriended Sticker Guy. And so we loved going to Reno because he really like did it up there. But then
wait, who is Sticker Guy?
Sticker Guy is, I mean, that's his name, Sticker Guy. He's like he makes, if you see like a punk band sticker, there's a 95% chance in the last 30 years that he made it, or the Sticker Guy, the company, made it.
Okay.
But like we met him back when he was like still putting sticker paper in the Xerox machine. And so yeah, but he ended up, he moved, or he wasn't around anymore. And so I guess we just didn't go to Reno anymore. But then when I was next went to Reno, and I kind of tapped into this new community, which is still that basement scene. Basement shows are our thing for the uninformed listener. Basement shows are, they're shows that typically happen in a basement. And there's something about that, like one exit, low ceiling, cramped quarters that makes for very magical rock and roll events. And there's basement shows happen all over the country, and we've been in other countries where versions of that happen. We played in Israel in a bomb shelter just south of the Lebanese border one time, but which had it still has that same vibe. And
just a little bit more, a little scarier. That's all.
Yeah, well, that's another story. But yeah, so we made some more friends in Reno, and so when Love Songs started playing, I called those same kids I say affectionately, and it's like, hey, I've got this other band, can we play there? And we played, and sometimes you go somewhere and you just click. You click with people. You are all on the same wavelength. You're all kind of doing the same thing and wanting the same thing, even though you can't articulate what it is you want. You have that same drive that's going, and like we really did connect with that. And then I got some demos from some bands that we'd played with, and I was just starting to do recording. Like I had a home studio set up in our garage. And so I tried to invite some of those bands, like, hey, you want to come down and record with me? But I would be fun. I would like to, do that. So sort of at the same time as us going up there and playing more often, more bands started coming down and recording at my studio. So it became like, even though it's 4 hours away, it became a very like pretty tight community. And I felt like we were very connected to everybody up there. And we were up there all the time, like once a month, every like 4 to 6 weeks, we'd go and play up there. And the shows just got better and better. And the basements got more and more like energy. People started to like know the words and to your songs, and that's that kind of stuff. And it just felt like, okay, here's people who get us. This is where we belong and feel comfortable. And there's like this mutual respect. And so one time we did, and every time we went to Reno, we tried to like step it up and do something kind of like unique and special for them. And so one time we decided, why don't we write a song about Reno, and we'll record it and we'll hand it out to everyone who goes to the show. Everyone gets a copy of this song. And then we wrote the lyrics on these 2 big poster boards, and we rolled them up, and then kind of in the middle of our set, we're like, hey, we've got a new song. It's about you. And then we drop the lyrics. Everyone could read along as we played it. And I think it was received exactly how we had hoped. And I think lots of times you do these ambitious, displays of love, and they become unrequited,
Right.
they fall very short of what your mind's eye had envisioned, there's a lot of teen comedies about this sort of experience, but I think this hit directly where we wanted to and how we wanted to hit. And so the song is about the people who were in the scene at that time. And this one girl would be made just cookies every time. So we'd mention her in there and the bands that we played with and the places that we played. And it was really like a love letter to the scene of Reno. And it still comes up. It was just mentioned sometime in the last year in an article about Reno as like a culture hub. They mentioned this band from San Francisco even has a song about the music scene in Reno. And so it still lives, it's out there. And I think I love that we're forever tied. If you type in Reno punk rock, we come up. And if you type up, if you look into our discography, Reno comes up. So I love that we have that bond there. And some of those people are still some very close friends with them now. And some of my absolute favorite, most listened to bands came out of that era as well from the Reno scene. So, that's Reno. That's where Love Songs Loves Us in Reno comes from.
And then Thrillhouse, other than being a Simpsons reference and probably one of the best Millhouse jokes ever.
Okay.
Can you talk about what Thrillhouse is?
Well, Milhouse character on The Simpsons, and one episode he's like everything's going his way, and he says everything's coming up Milhouse or Thrillhouse, and so they some people who we obviously had a lot in common with started I wonder if it was a record label before it was the record store, but either way it became a San Francisco, what is now a San Francisco institution. It's the Thrillhouse Records, which exists in the Upper Mission, or kind of on the cusp of the Upper Mission, Bernal Heights area. And it's like punk rock record store. They had a basement, so they had punk rock shows in the basement, and a record store upstairs, and people living in every available corner where you could put up a partition, and some where there weren't. And so it was a punk house, a punk house's punk house. And when you travel through San Francisco, you want to go to Thrillhouse Records, you want to go shopping, and maybe you can get a show there. And then you probably met some people who live there because their band toured through your town in Tennessee or whatever. So it was just a total culture hub. And Jackson was particularly spent a lot of time down there. And so it became a no-brainer that we should write a song about Thrillhouse. And so we did. And Jackson penned the lyrics to that one. That was a classic Jackson literary accomplishment. Something about no tagging with the toothpaste, no peeing in the shower. It creates a very good, second only to Punk House from Screeching Weasel. I think it paints a really good picture of what a punk house is.
Yeah.
So that's Thrillhouse. And both of those songs appear on a record called Another Guaranteed 40-Minute Music Set by Love Songs. The cover of that album is a photo taken by none other than this man to my left, the viewer's right, Mr. Nicholas.
Yeah, I'm on 2 Love Songs records. The what is it called? Time Off, right? Employees Handbook for Time Off.
Is the shorthand is Time Off. But I think, aren't you a third? Did you not take pictures of Jackson at the health club?
I think I did. Yeah.
Yeah. That's 3.
I know. Oh,
that's 3 record covers. You've
I forgot
taken.
about that. See, yeah. I'm hella famous.
Well, you're only as famous as we are, so that's sorry to bring you back down.
True. Yeah. One thing to mention is that for the cover of Another 40-Minute Music Set, it's it's an homage to the Rolling Stones' Sticky Fingers, which is famously a picture of jeans in a bulge. And so when Jackson told me, he's like, I want to recreate Sticky Fingers, that record cover. Can you come over and take pictures of my junk? I was like, if it was anybody except for you, I would say no. But because I love you so much, all right, let's go take pictures of your junk. So I spent 30 minutes up close to his crotch while he was in cutoff shorts with his appendicitis scar, or because he got his appendix out, so he still has a scar there. So I was very intimate with his nether regions and his appendix scar, and just spent a whole half hour just taking a picture of his junk, like thing after thing after thing. And then I finally got the shot that I wanted. But yeah, that was a very special moment. We became better friends that day.
Yeah, you went through something together, and you survived and came out the other end. Is this where you drop a picture of that record cover in?
I could. I was trying to bring it up, but I'm trying to type loud. Can you? Well, I'm trying to pull up the picture. Can you talk about any other notable love songs that like have a huge backstory to it?
Oh geez, I wish I was more prepared for this. Well, okay, there's International Porn Star Nuts Day, which is another foray out of
that is actually one of the ones I want to talk to you about. So
okay.
Thank you for that.
Back in somewhere in 1997, excuse me, in 1997, Brad from your mother and later Love Songs, was trying to figure out, how do porn stars get nuts that are so glisteningly hair free? And it just became one of those discussions, I think, that you have in the van when you're kind of like crammed together for many hours and ruminating over stuff. And so we speculated, was it like, do they shave? That seems really dangerous to use a razor. Like, do you use an epilady? That sounds horribly painful. Do you use Nair, like some hair removal potion or something? That seems like it might render you impotent or unable to bear children. Like we didn't know what the thing was. And again, this is pre-internet, so you can Google all day long and ruin your search history with results for how to do this. But back then, us children couldn't figure out how to do that. So we all decided there was a way. We had a way in mind, and we thought probably we're going to shave, but we're going to all try it. And we're going to show up. We had a show on November 15th, 1997. We had a show with Usus ID from Israel. And so we decided at this show, we're going to all show up having made our testicles hair free. And we're going to discuss it and see what worked for each other. And it was going to be like, so we know we're all going to be in the same room on this day. So let's all show up having done this. And so the fact that a band from Israel was there made it an international event. And so there we go.
Yeah, this is the photo of me that I spent staring at Jackson's junk for a very long time.
Yeah, well, we've all, whether by choice or not, have stared at Jackson's junk for a long time.
That's true. There's a very famous photo of him completely naked, covered in money, but that's a different story.
We have more pictures of Jackson in states of undress than otherwise.
But you were saying about ISBN Day.
So so that night, November 15th, 1997, we all showed up, as the lyrics say. We all showed up with sheer nuts, and we discussed how we did it. And I believe all of us indeed used a basic like safety razor that whatever. Bic or whatever, and relatively unscathed. And so that we deemed that International Porn Star Nuts Day. And when you declare a day, it becomes an annual event. And so every year after, we made it a point, whether you were grooming throughout the year or just for that occasion, regardless, on November 15th, you knew that your compadres were all in the same itchy boat. So that's a International Porn Star Nuts Day. And so it's more loosely observed now than it used to be. For a while, like we really tried to evangelize it. I mean, we wrote a song about it, and my goal in writing that song was to write one of those kind of like 4-chord progression choruses that was sort of like the best I could do for being anthemic, because I really wanted people to passionately be screaming with their fists in the air, "Shave your nuts!" I can't even remember the chorus to that at the moment exactly, but and for a short time we achieved that. We could play that song at a show and have like a whole and not only males, that became more of a universal thing, and we got to share it, and then everyone got to sing, and everyone got to yell and sing along like the chant I always wanted it to be, and but people got lazy, I guess, and that doesn't happen quite so much anymore.
For different reasons, and
For
both
lots of reasons.
physically and emotionally got lazy.
Right. Yes.
So with all this punk rock experience, with all this, committing to a performance regardless of somebody's there or not, you eventually made it into one of the most niche things ever. You made it into air guitar. Can you talk to me about how you made it into air guitar and what that experience was like?
Absolutely. I would love to. So yeah, as you said, like playing shows was often more, or like being in a band or whatever, all that whole thing of like playing music, being in a band, whatever, however you want to like frame it, was playing live shows, being able to having that physical outlet of being able to run around and jump off things and just totally spaz out and yell and and then not be reprimanded for it, because there's only so many places you can get away with doing that, for anyone who's tried at work, perhaps. So I enjoyed doing that. And we became friends with bands who that was also like a very primary objective for them. And so that became like a definite like motivation to keep doing this, because I needed that. That was my exercise. That was my my fitness and mental and physical fitness. And so when in 2006, there was this email that was going around for an online application submission to participate in an air guitar competition at the Independent in San Francisco. And a bunch of different people sent me this link as like, "Hey, Craig, this is something you might like." Like different people from different pockets of my life. So I sort of was like, all right, I'll enough people have said this. Maybe it's something I'll indulge in. And so I looked into it, and what it is you would you make a 1-minute edit of anything you want that you air guitar to. So you would go to this competition and then you get 1 minute, and that's kind of all I knew about it. And but I was also kind of like sort of shamed by the concept of air guitaring. Like I felt really comfortable bouncing around naked in front of lots of people singing about farts, but for some reason playing air guitar was a bit of a stretch. And so I didn't tell anybody about it. I just went to this competition at this bar in San Francisco. It's like a big bar. It's like, it's like 550 or 600 cap. Like it's twice as big as Gilman. And I went there, and you have to go a couple hours early because you got to submit your music and do all the kind of like whatever legal rigmarole of joining a competition. And I didn't expect anybody to be there, and nobody else really expected anybody to be there, because it seems like such a ridiculous thing. And a lot of people just kind of maybe told a couple friends and like, oh, they'll show up later. Well, this community, or this like group of people, it's like a weird collection of people who would want to do that. But most of them, so I came at it as having a lot of stage time under my belt already, but a lot of these other people didn't have that outlet. They weren't in a band or they didn't do this kind of thing regularly, but it was something like somewhere in there, they had this like need to be silly, or as my friend Alex says, like to go sideways. And I really recognize that right away. Like these are people who need a creative outlet, and like a really absurd creative outlet, and they're willing to do that. Like I appreciate that very highly. And so I started bonding really quickly with these people. And one of the guys leaves, but this is before the competition. One of the guys leaves the backstage area to go get more beer, and he comes back and he is just like panicked. Like you can tell he saw something very scary. We ask him what it is, and he's like, "It is totally full out there." And we all peek out from the backstage door, and it is absolutely sold out. and it was like a meniscus of people, like, just like the sea of people all lined up and pushed up against the walls, and it was just full. And we came to find out that tickets were like scalp tickets were going on Craigslist for $100 a piece. It was like an event.
Oh, wow.
But then none of us, the people who did invite friends, they didn't buy tickets in advance. So suddenly we're all here about to perform in front of this like sold out, like pretty rabid, like loud crowd. And nobody is there to support us, like that we know. Like nobody has friends there. It's just so suddenly that immediately shifted the dynamic to be like, oh, we're here to support us. We're going to be our loudest support, which again, like right out of the gate for that to sense that sort of like, camaraderie and community really appealed to me. And so the whole night it was like one competitor after another, and the loudest, I mean, it was like a loud, raucous affair. People were very into it. Like because it's kind of like a combination of a rock concert. But it's also a comedy show because there's 3 judges who give like color commentary, kind of American Idol style. But it's like one of the guys from The Onion was there, and the DJs, I can't remember. Anyway, I don't remember who was that person, but and then on top of all that, it's a sporting event where somebody is vying to win this thing. So it's like it taps into all those things that a spectator would like come to an event for, and it's all in one. And so, but then louder than all them was all of the other competitors really like cheering each other on and supporting each other. And it was a really, really fun event all around. It was super supportive. Like the audience, you didn't really have to win an audience over like playing in a band that people don't really, didn't come there to see your band. Like you have to like try really hard to like win them over. And I'd spent years doing that. And so this was a lot easier because they were already like especially the people who were paying $100 to go there, like they already bought into this. And then it was just loud and fun and creative, and it was fun. And then I won on top of that. So that made it all the sweeter. And it turns out that was only the regional level competition. And there's other regional competitions across the country. So then all those people have to compete against each other on a national level. And so I went to that one, which was all the people who had won their respective regions. And it was the exact same vibe, but all the competitors were of a much higher, like everyone was the winner in their region. So like the level of creativity and vision was much higher. And I felt like, okay, I can relate to this even better, because now it seems like when you're playing with another band that you really respect, it really brings up your A game as well. And then I won that as well. And then that's when I was like, I'm totally hooked on this. I love this. I love the people that are involved. It's super creative. It's super silly. It like checks all my boxes. And so I did that. I won the US title that year. I did not win the worlds, but I went to the world competition, which is the US competition. I think the talent or the creative perspective is fairly uniquely American, and that like somebody described it as like Americans always make blockbusters. And so I think it like a lot of the like American kind of concepts for their air guitar routines are that sort of blockbuster sort of vibe. Like it's pretty big and explosive, where on the world stage, it's maybe a little more pure, at least at that time. Things have kind of changed and evolved, but, and this is like 15 years ago. So those competitors, when I got to the US stage, it wasn't quite as bombastic as like I was expecting. Like I was expecting it just be ratcheted up another level, but it wasn't. But what it was again, more boxes that really like I required at that time. Like it was an international setting of people all communicating under the premise that like we're doing something really silly in front of people and really leaning into it and enjoying it. And then you've got a stage to do that on. And so it was a total blast. And I always called it like, it was just a week-long music nerd fest. Where you're just like with other geeky music lovers from around the world who are also like have this sort of performative aspect to them. And so, yeah, I was hooked. And so I came back when I competed the next year, because I was the US champ. I automatically had to compete to defend my title. And I did not win, but I just wanted to go in there and prove that I was not just an overnight, what do you call that? A
flash
one trick pony kind of performer. And I wanted to prove that like I was like in there and committed to like the artistry of it, and so I did. But then I was kind of hooked. So the next year came around, and I competed again, because I enjoyed the competition. But then I won, and then I won the national level. So then I went to the world championships again, and then I won that, and there was no turning back at that point. And from that point on, I probably spent the next, it was close to 10-ish years. That was like my main vocation. was as a professional air guitarist. So when you say I'm a corporate shill, that's that's what you're talking about, clearly.
Absolutely. Can you talk about number one, what was your life like after you won the championship, and then also what makes a good air guitar performance? And can you talk about the mechanics of that, of what actually makes a good air guitar performance?
Sure. If you're being in an air guitar competition and you're being judged, I mean, you're literally giving like values as to how well you do, because that's how you have to rank people. There's 3 criteria that they apply that the judges should have in mind when they're judging an air guitar routine. And that is your technical merit, which is how much what you're doing syncopates with the music. And typically that's like your fingers moving and that sort of, so like that's the technical, which is probably the most obvious component. So if somebody's in their head thinking like, oh, an air guitar competition is like, you've got to hit every note. And if the note goes up, your hand goes up like that. And this hand has to strum at the same time. And like that, I came into it like, I have those skills and I could probably be most accurate. And I think that's what I thought my strength was. Then it turns out really quickly, you realize like that is the least exciting part about it. Like that, I guess that gets you in the door, but like I've lost, very like, reasonably lost against people who've never picked up a guitar, their guitar. And so, it plays very little. The main thing is that your body syncopates to the music in a somehow air guitar related fashion, right? The next thing is stage presence, which is a much bigger thing because you're on a stage and you are the only one on stage, and there's not even like amps or a drum set or a mic stand. Like it is you and that entire stage. So think of in a band, like you've got this little square box you can kind of move around in, and you can kind of like, oh, well, I got to go over towards the guitar player, make sure he doesn't hit me in the face with the headstock. Like it's very finite what you do there. But like when you are the only performer on a huge stage and you're not bound by a mic cable or a guitar cable, like pretty much the entire venue is at your disposal. So what you do with it, what you wear while you're doing that thing, like how are you acknowledging the people in the back row? Are you like, how much do you use or abuse your environment? And so that's the other one. But then there is the third element. I'm going back into my like media mode. The je ne sais quoi of air guitar is it's called airness, and airness, like the Supreme Court judged pornography. You can't define it, but you know it when you see it. That's the thing that I think most everybody falls back on, is like, if you just watch something incredible and maybe they played like half the notes, or maybe they were like so over there you didn't even see them playing the guitar, but whatever they were doing was like exciting or explosive or interesting, compelling, whatever it is, like that's called airness. And I guess it's kind of like a charisma point count for air guitar competitions. Yeah, so those are the 3 things that a judge is looking for.
I was going to say, when I think about air guitar, I think about the difference between acting for a play versus being in film, where a film is very tight and close, whereas being on a play, it's big, exaggerated motions. And to me, air guitar is a play.
Yeah, and somebody else kind of likened it to you don't hire if you have a martial artist in a movie, you don't necessarily hire the like martial arts teacher. You hire the person who can like make a bombastic version of that. So like maybe it's tight movements, but like it doesn't play well on a screen. So you got to do the one that he's like the really fully extended version of that, like the more gregarious, amplified version of whatever it is. And that's what it is. Like Corbett from Bobby Joe Ebola talked about that you're distilling all the very essence of rock and roll into like a performance. And you're like there for that moment. Like you don't have to play the right note, but you just have to like be there and entertain people.
And you just name dropped Corbett. Is that Corbett Redford?
That is Corbett Redford,
the director of the Take It. Is it Take It Back?
Turn It Around.
Turn It Around. Sorry,
Yes.
I always mix that up between that and the Dickies. I have a hilarious Dickies story for you sometime.
I love it.
Do you know the Dickies? Are you familiar with the Dickies?
I'm very well. I'm gonna go out and say I am very familiar with Dickies.
Can I tell you my Dickies story?
I would love to hear a Dickie story.
Okay. Are you familiar with the game / app Pokemon Go?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how old Stan Lee of the Dickies is?
Very.
Okay. So he's up in his 60s basically. Are you familiar with the band Punk Rock Karaoke?
Yes.
Okay.
Of which Stan Lee is the guitar player.
Currently, yes.
One of the guitar players. Yeah.
Yeah. So for anybody listening,
side note, Stan Lee, the Dickies' other high school counterpart band at their high school was Quiet Riot.
Are you serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like Stan Lee and Randy Rhoads and Carvazos, the Quiet Riot guitar player now, or at their heyday, they were all like high school chums. So like if you went to go see your high school friend's high school band, you either went to go see Quiet Riot or the Dickies. But also like Stan Lee's guitar player is guitar playing is like he can shred. He's a shredder. He's like an 80s shredder. So he's definitely part of that school. He just went a much more colorful route, I think. Anyway, sorry. It's hard to sidetrack. I thought you might.
No, you're good. I'm interviewing you, sir, but I'm just taking an anecdote story because I figured you appreciate this. So for anybody listening or watching that doesn't know what Punk Rock Karaoke is a cover band started by Greg Hetson of Bad Religion, and different punk rock members have joined over the years. People from Swinging Utters, The Adolescents, so on and so forth. This particular version of it that I saw was Stanley of the Dickies, Darren Pfeiffer from Goldfinger on drums, and the bassist / lead singer, or the bassist from the Dickies as well was there. I forget his name. Apologize. And then Stan. And my friend had tickets to Punk Rock Karaoke in Seattle, and he's like, "Hey, you want to come with me?" I was like, "I'd love to," because I used to see Punk Rock Karaoke all the time at Cafe du Nord in San Francisco all the time, which was always a fun time. So what Punk Rock Karaoke is that they have a list of punk rock songs in the back. You pick a song that you want to sing, and that band is your band, and you're the singer. The audience is the singer, and so the excitement of the show really comes from like whatever the next song is, and seeing how amazing or terrible whoever song it is to get up to sing. But anyway, so I go, it's literally down the hill. Like I live up the hill from El Corazon, which is famously the off ramp, which is where like a lot of Seattle bands came from. And so my friend Jim was like, "Oh, I'm on the list for Punk Rock Karaoke. Do you want to come with me?" I'm like, "Sure." He's like, "My friend Stan got me in." I was like, "Okay," and I wasn't even paying attention. So I walked down there, and then Jim's like, "Oh, hey, Stan's there," and like I would go say hi, and we turn the corner, and it's Stan Lee from the Dickies, and I'm like, "Oh shit, it's Stan Lee," and so he's playing on his phone, and I like introduce myself, nice to meet you, whatever, and like I just casually look at what's on his phone, and he's playing Pokemon Go, and I'm a little bit confused / amused that he's playing that. Him at his age, who like, it's not my generation, it's not your generation, it's my sister's generation of Pokemon Go. Like this dude is like completely in love with Pokemon to the point where he looks at me, he's like, "Do you play Pokemon Go?" I'm like, "I used to." He's like, "Can we be friends?" So within 15 minutes of meeting Stan Lee, I am now friends with him on Pokemon Go and like trading him stuff to the point where like Greg comes out, grabs Stan, he's like, "We got to go on stage," and he's like, "Okay," and like he's like, "We'll play later." So I watched the entirety of Punk Rock Karaoke, and then Stan immediately hops off stage. He's like, "Let's play Pokemon Go again." So we go backstage, where most people backstage, you assume it's like where all the debauchery goes on, but it's like all of us like huddled together, like playing Pokemon with each other. And Darren Pfeiffer comes back and looks at us like all on our phones. He's like, "You fucking nerds."
He's
which
not
is like
wrong.
which is horrifying because they're like, Greg Hetson and Darren look so annoyed at us because we're all like basically distracting Stan. They're like, we just want to go home. I want to eat our crappy 2 a.m. pizza and get in the van and go home. Like, please stop it. So
awesome.
That's my Stan Lee story.
I like it. There's a Bad Religion documentary back in the, like, I don't know, probably like 91, maybe 92. And in it, they interview, it's like a European tour or something. So some German guy is interviewing them in the parking lot, and he kind of goes like member by member, what do you do? And so they're kind of explaining it, but they're explaining it because there's a slight language barrier. They're explaining it in kind of rudimentary terms. And they go to like the drummer Pete, and he's like, oh, I'm a school teacher and blah, blah. And they go to like Greg Graffin, and, oh, I'm a college professor of this. And then it's like, oh, I started a business where I maintain automobiles or motorcycles for films. And like everyone, like he's pretty ambitious, like successful. Oh, I started Epitaph Records, but and then they get to Greg Hetson. He's like, I like video games, like, Nintendo. That was it. That was the end of it. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess you were in Red Cross, and then Circle Jerks, and now you're in Bad Religion. Yeah, of course all you do is play video games.
That's amazing. To kind of put a bow on the conversation, post air guitar, there's also one other thing I want to talk to you about, because it's something I worked on as well, which I didn't know you worked on until after the fact. I didn't know that you worked on Rock Band until you had done a performance for Rock Band Beatles. Can you talk about your experience with getting involved with Rock Band and what that was all about?
There's a very long, kind of, I think it's fun story of how I got there, but essentially it was one of the animators, or one of the filmographers for this new game that was going to be called Rock Band. It was the Guitar Hero guys split off and made and we're starting a new company, and their flagship game was going to be Rock Band, but it was all like under wraps. They didn't want to talk about it. And so kind of hush hush, but one of the filmographers was a guy who played in a band back in the Bay Area that we used to play with. And John Yee from Spishak, he, as I recall, it was a long time ago, but he's like, hey, I got the perfect guy for the guitar player for this game, the perfect actor for this. Let's do that. And then, but kind of like separate from his campaign to get me in there. And I don't know any of this. I've absolutely I haven't seen this guy, John, in years. Like I have no idea. I don't know this game exists or anything. But then independently of that, the other team, like the casting agents, were trying to get this other guy, this air guitar guy. So anyway, fast forward a couple years, it turns out they're both talking about the same guy. I get brought in, and I became the guitar player, the male guitar player. And I think I was like the rock and drama, because remember you could do different characters, like the rock, the drama and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, so I did that. I got brought in to do that, which is probably the best job I've ever had in my entire life. The thing I have, so when I had originally auditioned, I had to send like these audition videos, because they're based in New York, the animation studios in New York, and I'm in San Francisco or Oakland or Alameda, whatever. I'm in the West Coast, and I still have to send these audition videos because I can't just come in and audition for them. And so that's causing some problems, because they want someone local, because if they have to keep doing reshoots, it's like a new technology they're trying to work on. So they want someone close by, but for whatever reason, they're really like campaigning for me to also go in there to be this person. So during all this audition process, I'm just like waiting, like on an audition, right? You don't know if you're going to get it, but you put all this time and money or effort into it. And like you put like your emotional state, it seems to somehow depend on how this comes out, And I remember I was driving on a long drive, and I was waiting for the phone call. And like in the middle of the drive, I got the phone call. I was like, sorry, we're going with someone local for this job. And I hung up the phone, and I was like, never in my life have I ever felt qualified to hold a job except for this one time.
Please God, let me be in a mocap suit and wear a plum smuggler onesie. I need to have this job.
I didn't know any of that. I didn't know anything. All I knew is like, this was somehow the job I was born to do. And I felt very disappointed. And I had not expected that I would feel so disappointed by this, let down by it. Anyway, it turns out the person that they hired didn't work out. So they immediately called me out and brought me out and started a working relationship. And I did that for years, for like, most of the Rock Band video games. And I ended up also being the drummer for a lot of the characters, whatever the different people that you can choose. I was the male drummer, and yeah, it paid super well, and they just fly me out to New York. I would spend so much time in New York that like I felt like if I ever moved anywhere, I can move here. Like you spend that much time, like really just walking around and sussing out another place. Cause I was Bay Area my whole life. And I traveled all over the world, as like kind of corny as that sounds, but like only to realize like, no, I'm Bay Area. Like I that's where my sensibilities are. Like I was brought up here. So that's like deep inside me. But then I was like, New York is like, that's how much time I spent there, is like, I actually felt like I could actually live here. So yeah, that was a great time. And I did the Beatles one. They brought me out to do the Beatles one. And my one story, which if you're going to edit it, you can edit now. So on the very last day, so it's a film shoot basically. So they have one of those rigid kinds of schedules. And so this is the last day before we go into post-production. So they bring me in, and I'm kind of the ringer for all the like band oriented rock bands. So like AC/DC or whatever, like they'll get whoever to do, like if it's Motley Crue, they have Motley Crue come in and do it. But like Motley Crue is only going to be there for an hour. So, but this takes like 20 hours of footage. So I do the other 19 hours of mocap. And so for the Beatles, it was the same kind of thing. They brought in that band Love, the Beatles. You probably know actually a lot of this backstory, but like they brought in Love, and they do that for a living. 302 shows a day, 365 days a year. They are the Beatles, right? But they're also in Las Vegas, and it's a lot cheaper to just bring me in, who's a quick study on all these things and do that stuff. So I was a catch-all, and I was there for I came out there a couple times, and on the last day of the last time we can catch any of these, they've got this punch list of like 50 little clips they need to get. And so I remember I was like put on like a payroll or something to like just study the Beatles. And so I watched so many Beatles videos, and I learned all the like head shakes, and I playing lefty bass, and like I try to learn all these things. And then so I'm as prepared as I can be going into this sort of thing. On the last day, we're going through this punch list, and we're just like John this, Ringo this, and so there's one last, at the end of the day, we have one last thing. And it was like, they were really bent up. They saved this one for last. It was just one clip of George Harrison, or it was John Lennon. I remember it was like one specific clip, and it was from the rooftop performance. And it's like, they show it for like 5 seconds or like 3 seconds, but it's this total iconic clip. It's like an hour-long concert. So like they're scrubbing through this video, but they're like frantically doing it. So they keep missing it. They're like, I know it's this one thing. And so everything gets really stressful at this time, because it's the last thing. It's the end of the last day. And at the same time, this is such a closed set. Like they shut down the whole building. They didn't want anyone knowing that this was going on, because this also coincided with the Beatles being released on Apple Music. It was like this like multi-million-dollar thing that was happening. And we were like one of the components of that. And so the building shut off, and it's like there's just us, like me, the actor, a couple of tech people, and the producer director. Very small room, and or very small like group doing this, and they're trying to like find this one set. They projected on the wall all the footage that I'm trying to emulate as we go, and so they're looking for this one clip, and it's shown up on the wall, and they're bouncing around, and everyone's getting like really tight and stressful. And I'm also, it was a John Lennon clip, and I'd already done all the like George Harrison stuff earlier in the day, but they know it's between these two clips of George Harrison, like doing these close-ups of George Harrison, and so they keep like, we spent like 10 really frantic, stressful minutes trying to like scrub through this like 5 minutes of footage, like frame by frame by frame, and it's I'm just trying to really show you like how stressful it was. And all of a sudden, in the back of the room, there's this commotion, and there's no commotion because this is like a super locked set. And we turn around, and it's Danny Harrison, who's like George Harrison's son. He's the same age as George Harrison is in this video that we've been watching meticulously frame by frame for like, all day essentially. And he looks absolutely, utterly identical to him. The same like pudding line kind of mustache beard combo, the same length hair. He's got the same genetic makeup. Like it's a spitting image carbon copy of him on the screen and him over there. And also everyone's like, who the hell is in here? Who got it? How'd you get past security kind of thing? And we all look, and it was just this like, hi. And like, and in my mind, I'm thinking like, I'm sure glad I'm done with your dad's smarts right now, because that would be awkward for me to do that in front of you. But anyway,
Right.
yeah, so I got to meet Danny Harrison, and he was like a super duper sweetheart, and he was like really excited to kind of be there. And then I didn't realize this until later, and I don't even think the people I worked with realized this, but he worked at Harmonix. Oh, in fact, they learned that they're like, oh, this guy Danny works at our company. But then in some magazine of like Rockstar's Kids, there was a profile on Danny Harrison, and there's like a picture of him at work, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, that's you? You're George Harrison's. Like, it wasn't until they saw this like magazine that they'd realized that their coworker was the guy from the Beatles' son and stuff. And so I think he was there because he had all access to anything Beatles related, but also because I think he coordinated the video game component because he had his foot in both worlds, had a foot in both worlds.
The reason that Guitar Hero Van Halen happened is because Wolfgang Van Halen was a huge Guitar Hero fan. But that's my own story.
One of my favorite Onion articles is Wolfgang finally comes out as bass player to dad.
That's awesome. Well, Craig, it was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for all these amazing stories and sharing your life with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I think I finally know you, Craig.
No, we'll have to keep trying.
Okay.
I barely know you, so we'll have to make this a little more two-way next time.
Who are you again? Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.